Right, ladies and gentlemen, this week I'm going to be installing the rear shocks on the bobber. So I'm at a position now where I'm happy with the layout or the way the stance of the bike is, if that makes sense. So I've lowered the front, just threw down the shock tubes through the triple trees, so I'm happy with that. The rear is slightly more complicated, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. But you've probably seen in other videos I had a couple of pieces of scrap timber in place of the shocks. Now, yeah, they weren't permanent, they were just to give me an idea of how the bike's going to sit. So obviously those scrap bits of timber were slightly smaller than the original shocks. The reason for that is because I've changed the angle of the swing arm now. So I've lowered it, and basically it's decreased that angle of the mounting points from the frame to the swing arm, if that makes sense. So what I could have done, I could have just bought a pair of smaller shocks, but they'd have to be quite considerably they'd have to be smaller. So yeah, they'd have to be smaller, and they are quite expensive, and I didn't like the look of them. So what I'm going to do is fit the original shocks, but I'm going to change the mounting location on the swing arm. So I'm basically going to remove the mounting point on the swing arm. So it's just a bit of folded up steel, fabricated piece of steel that I'm just going to cut off with a grinder very carefully and place it further down on the swing arm. So it's going to increase that distance, so I'm going to be able to use these shocks. Now, I may continue to use these shocks, but I don't know yet. I may get some nice ones, but these are a fairly standard size, so it opens up to a whole range of doors for me, what I can do in the future. But for now, we're just kind of getting stuff in place. So hopefully that makes sense. Right, so I've gone ahead, I've cleaned down a weld on the back of the swing arm, on the back of the swing arm, just because it was hindering me putting the rear mount in place. So I can swing that down now, and that's where it's going to locate. So you can see the distance that it's moved across from the original position. So it was mounted here, it's moved down probably a couple of inches to its new location. So all I'm going to do now is clean up or remove some of the paint on the mounts and on the swing arm, and just tack it in place on both mounts, and I'll square them both up so they're identical.